Voter ID laws are considered by many to be a Republican attempt to disenfranchise and suppress poor, young, and minority voters who tend to lean Democratic. Republicans argue the laws are intended to curb voter fraud, but studies in 10 states found that out of 40 million registered voters, there were fewer than 70 voter fraud convictions in the past 10 years. In this election, 33 states have passed voter ID laws, 10 in just the past year alone, including Republican-controlled states Alabama, Kansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Wisconsin. A judge blocked Pennsylvania from enforcing its law this November, and South Carolina and Texas are suing the Department of Justice for blocking theirs. Attorney General Eric Holder is an outspoken critic against these and similar voter ID laws, calling them the equivalent of a modern-day poll tax. I caught up with the Attorney General in Washington, D.C. Busy time for you, no?
Always is. The Justice Department's an interesting place, and there are a lot of issues that we are constantly confronting. So it's always pretty busy here.
I know one reason why it's especially busy this election season is because of the voter ID issue. Everyone's debating whether or not this is discrimination, whether or not this is something that we shouldn't even be talking about.
Well, the Justice Department has a unique responsibility in that regard. We're the enforcers of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and in particular, Section 5 of that act, which deals with the whole question of voting. And so we've been active in that regard. We filed suits against certain states where we thought the practices that they sought to introduce were inappropriate. We have pre-cleared other states where we think the changes they have made are in fact appropriate. So we have a good number of lawyers in our Civil Rights Division who are engaged at this moment in just that subject.
Help walk me through this, because there are many people who are saying that the voter ID laws that are being introduced are unfair, that they violate the spirit of the Voting Rights Act.
Voting is a fundamental right. The 1965 Voting Rights Act is in some ways the crown jewel of the civil rights legislation. And it is my responsibility as Attorney General, it is the responsibility of those of us in the Justice Department to ensure that the American people have that most basic of rights, the ability to express themselves, to choose their leaders, the right of the franchise. People died, people gave their lives, people suffered in order to have that very important right. And it is something that I take very seriously as Attorney General.
There are people who challenge you, who say, everyone has access to an ID. If you don't have an ID, go get one. What's going on in places like Texas or say Pennsylvania that makes that not the case?
Well, first, make very clear, we are against voter fraud. But a lot of the assumptions that people make about people having the necessary ID is not accurate. There are a substantial number of people who live in cities who do not have driver's licenses. There are people who have voted for 50 and 60 years who do not have the required identification that some of these new laws say they must have in order to vote. In some instances, as we saw in Texas, getting the required identification materials is too difficult. They have to drive too far to get them. You have to pay once you get to that place in order to get something that is a constitutional right. You should never have to pay to exercise a constitutional right. And so for those and other reasons, we have been very appropriately aggressive in going against those laws that we think contravene the 65 Voting Rights Act.
Obviously, this becomes a political issue on some level. Many argue that it's the Republican Party that wants to enforce these laws because, quite frankly, it suppresses a block of people, whether it's black people, brown people, poor people, who don't traditionally vote Republican.
Well, we have to make our judgments on the basis of the law, and the determinations that we make are legal ones, not political ones. And I'm acting, I think, consistent with the obligations and the tradition of this department.
Now, you're also obviously the first African-American Attorney General. Before that, you were the first African-American Deputy Attorney General. I mean, those are huge legacies that you're certainly leaving. Does it shape or in any way sort of how you go about your job or how you think about your job?
Well, I'm the Attorney General of the United States, and I'm the Attorney General for all of the American people. But I think about, generations of African Americans who did not have opportunities that I have. And I want to try to make sure that opportunity is available to people of all colors, all faiths, all genders. That's one of the things that I think I have to try to do as Attorney General. And so, yeah, there's a special pressure, I suppose, that's brought, given the unique fact that I am the first African American Attorney General. But again, if I focus on the job, focus on the traditions of this department, I think I can do the right thing.
It's his relationship with President Obama that's sometimes challenging.
We have a personal relationship, and I am his Attorney General, but that means that our professional relationship has to be a little different. The Attorney General has to be independent of the White House, and so it means that some of the very important things that I do, I can't share with him.
Is that tough?
Yeah, it is, because as I said, we have a good relationship. We like each other, but I think he understands also that it's in his best interests, as well as the department's and the nation's, for the Justice Department and the Attorney General to be independent. He's asked me, you know, you wanted this job. You still think that this was a good decision on your part? And, you know, we laugh about that.
But what do you say? What's your final answer when he asked that?
Yeah, you know, it was a job that I wanted. I was glad that he thought that I could do the job and gave me the opportunity to become Attorney General. You know, I have a limited time that I'm going to be Attorney General. I had a life before, I'll have a life after, and I hope that during the time that I'm Attorney General that I will focus on the kinds of things that are going to make America a better place, that make America be the country that it can be, a country that lives up to its values, and all the kinds of positive changes that we've made and that we still need to focus on.
Up next on Our World with Black Enterprise.
That is changing the game mid-game. Don't tell me why we're not prepared. Why did you change the game?